Hello, Donna.
Okay, so we are 108A, right in the middle. So we had a debate that these six tzedakah boxes, these six chests that had money from extra things would be used for voluntary offerings. So the question was, which six things was it? So the last two opinions we had was, I believe, Shmuel and Rabbi Oshia. That was the Kohen Gadol's daily offering. So if you had any extra money from that offering, so you wanted to purchase X amount, and now the price went down, you had extra money, would you put it in that extra tzedakah box or not? So it's about, I don't know, 10, 12 lines in. So let's see. So Shmuel, who says that it was corresponding not to the Kohen Gadol, it was the Kohen Gadol. Why did he not say like Rabbi Oshia? So Shmuel, my time lama Rabbi Oshia. So he said, I think we did this a little yesterday, just to review, Keenan Tanalei Reisha. That which Rabbi Oshia added, extra money for birds, was already taught in the other 7 tzedakah boxes, not these 6. Rabbi Oshia, Tani velo Tani Keenan, Tani Rabbi Oshia, Tani Keenan. So what's with Rabbi Oshia? Doesn't it already say that? So it says Rabbi Oshia, Chad lekinen and Chad le Mosar kinen. If there's a special chest to buy the birds from, there's another one that was the one that extra money that was left over from buying the birds they would use to buy the voluntary offerings. Reb Oshia, my time Amar Shmuel. Why did Reb Oshia say like Shmuel that the money of the extra money of the Kohen Gadol's daily offering would be used to buy voluntary offerings? Sabra command Amar Mosar Shalat Siris Eva Kohen Gadol Yirkav. Because he holds like the opinion that says that the extra money of the Kohen Gadol for his daily offering would have to be yirkav, would have to spoil. So if you just leave it. The Tanya, as the Brisa says, Mosar minchas nedava, Mosar minchas yirkav. So cryptic statement that some extra money of a voluntary offering, extra money of a flower offerings. What does that mean? My kamar. Amar of Chista Haki Kamar Mosar Minchas Chota Nedava. Mosar Minchas Chota. If you have extra money from the sinner's mincha offering, it becomes a nedava, a voluntary offering. You put into the chest and can use it for a voluntary offering. Mosar Asiris Ha'efa Shel Kohen Gadol Yirkav. Extra money the Kohen Gadol's offering has to just be left. We're going to see because it doesn't really have its own category. It's not really considered a chatos, so the money from that offering can't be used for anything else. A regular chatos offering, you're allowed to use the money for a voluntary offering, but this is it's not a sin offering, it's not a voluntary offering. So it's obligatory offering of the Kohen Gadol, but its extra money that was designated for this offering has nothing to be transformed into. So Rabbi Amar no. Afilu Mosar Asir Zeva Shel Kohen Gadol Nami Nedava. Rabbi disagrees and says you can even use this money for a voluntary offerings. Okay, so two opinions. So Ella Mosar Lachme Toda Yirkav. That the Brisa says the money that has to go and just be left is the extra money spent on thanks offering. Extra money of a thanks offering is also, it's not a chatos, it's not a voluntary offering. It doesn't. What would you do with the money? It has nowhere. It can't translate into anything else. We don't find just bread being brought on its own, so the money just stays. So, okay. So Biplukta. So this is actually a debate. Mosar Asir Se'efa Kohen Gadol. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Nedava. Rabbi Yochanan says that the offering of the Kohen Gadol, the extra money can be used for a voluntary offering, and Rabbi Eliezer Amar Yirkav. And Rabbi Eliezer says no, you have to leave it, and there's no place for it to go. Meisvei Mosar Shkolim. The Mishnah says that leftover shkolim. So you bring X amount of shkolim, and now you have extra. So what do you do with the extra shkolim that were brought to the temple? So Mosar shkolim chulin. So extra shalom are mundane. Umoser asiri se'efa, and extra 1/10 of a measurement. So right now we don't know what is that referring to. We're going to assume it's referring to the amount. It's referring to the sacrifice of the Kohen Gadol. Umosar kine zavin, the kine zavos, and the different bird offerings that are brought. If a person's a zav or a zava, they have certain emissions that makes them impure. The kine yolados, and the birds you bring if a lady gives birth. The chatos, v'ashamos, mosrei, and adava. All of these extra, the money from these that are extra, you can use as a voluntary offering. The question is, what did it mean, extra 1/10 of a measurement? What was that referring to? Ma'ilav moser asiris ha'efa shel Kohen Gadol? Was it not referring to this daily offering of the Kohen Gadol? And therefore we said that that you use the extra money for a voluntary offering. So isn't that not a question on Rabbi Eliezer, who said that the money has to just go to waste? Says the Gemara, lo, moser minchas chota. That amount was actually referring to the sinner's flour offering, but not to the Kohen Gadol's offering. And therefore, basically, Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Yochanan would read this Mishnah in two different ways. Either that's referring to the Kohen Gadol's offering, or it's referring to the sinner's flour offering. Amr of Nacham Bari Rav Yitzchak Mistaber Command Amr Mosar Asir Se'efa Kohen Gadol Yirka. It's more logical to say that the extra money of this daily offering of the Kohen Gadol is going to have to go to waste. Why? The Tanya lo yasim ala Hashem v'lo yitin la levona. So when describing this offering, so it says you don't put any oil on it, you don't put any frankincense on it, and then it calls it a chatas. So Amar of Yehuda, he kriya chatas ve'en acharis kriya chatas. This is called the chatas, even though it's lacking its chatas dimensions, meaning there's no frankincense on it. Usually the chatas will have the levona, the frankincense with it. So this is called the chatas. Amar Yehuda, he kriya chatas ve'en acharis kriya chatas. Limit ala sir tzeifa shel Kohen Gadol. 1 second, sorry. 1 second. Sorry. The this is referring to the not the Kohen Gadol's offering. This is referring to the mincha offering of a sinner. Sorry, the mincha offering of a sinner. It says you don't put any oil on it, you don't put any frankincense on it, but yet it calls it a chatas. So even though the sinner's flour offering is different than the other flour offerings, you don't put any frankincense on it, you don't put any oil on it. The Torah still refers to it as a sin offering. So says the Gemara, only this unique case of a sin offering is called a sin offering, but nothing else would be called a sin offering. Meaning, only this is called a chatas, but the measurement that you need, the flour you need for the Kohen Gadol's offering, is not called a chatas. And therefore, it would need v'tuna levona. It says the Gemara, u'mede'ena kriya chatas. So then, mosara yirka. So says the Gemara that since this offering is not called the chatas, the Kohen Gadol's offering is not called the chatas. So therefore, once it's not called the chatas, it's not going to, its money is going to have nowhere to go. If it was called the chatas, so the rule is extra chatas money can be used for voluntary offering. But since it's not even called the chatas, so then its money has nowhere to go, and therefore it'll just have to sit there and be left to waste. So after all the dust settles, two opinions about the extra money of a Kohen Gadol's daily offering. Does it can be used for a voluntary offering, or does it have to sit and just go to waste because it can't be used for anything? Yeah, what a waste, right? Yeah. Okay. So continuing phraseologies that are said, and then what do you do with it? So up until now, the wording of the Mishnayos has been Harei alai. It's upon me. Upon me means that whatever happens to the animal, you have to replenish it. If you say it's upon me to bring something, then you have to do it. Even if the animal disappears, you owe the temple money. If you say Hare Zeh, this animal, so then you want this animal to be brought, but if that animal goes and gets a blemish, so then you're not obligated, according to the strict letter of the law, to replenish it. Because you wanted specifically this. That's what's called a neder versus a nedava. So these mishnayos, now we're switching from Hare Alai to Hare Zeh. So, for example, Shor Zeh, this ox, Ola. I want this ox to be an Ola bin Nistayv. It goes, wanders off, gets a blemish. So now, Im Ratza Yavi B'damav Shnaim. If you want, you can bring with the money for the ox 2 offerings. Because basically, you don't have to do anything. So if you want to do something. So, Im Ratza Yavi B'damav Shnaim. If you say Shnei Shvarim Elu Ola, these 2 oxen are going to be Ola, and now they both run off, get a blemish, and come back. Vinistavu, or just get a blemish. Then what do? Ratza Yavi B'demei Echad. You can bring 1 offering if you want. Because once again, you're not obligated to replenish these 2. The Rebbe Oser, but Rebbe prohibits it. Now we're going to see Rebbe is consistent with his opinion that if you offer to bring, a smaller one, you can't fulfill your vow with a bigger one. But even Rebbe, who says it's prohibited to do this, is only talking about lechatchila. Ideally, it's prohibited to do that. But according to the strict letter of the law, Rebbe agrees that you're not really responsible for these offerings. You said Hare Zeh, and you didn't say Hare Alai. So if you were to bring, let's say, if you were going to bring 2 oxen, and instead you brought for the money of 2, you brought 1, so you have 2 $500 oxen, and now they got blemished. So instead you bring 1 big ox worth $1,000. So Rebbe says lechatchila, ideally you shouldn't do that, but if you ended up bringing it, it's totally fine, because once again, you're not obligated. There's no insurance policy over here. When you say Hare Zeh, you say Hare Alai, there's an insurance policy. You have to replenish it. So a ram, if you say this ram is going to be an Ola, and it gets a blemish, what do? You can bring a sheep. If the sheep gets a blemish, you're going to bring as an Ola. Then you can bring a ram in its place. So a ram is bigger than a sheep; it's older, right? But Rebbe Oser, again, Rebbe says ideally you can't do that because of his opinion that you can't fulfill your smaller obligation with a bigger animal. You have to bring exactly what you brought. So in this case, ideally you should do that. However, if you ended up bringing it, it's also, even according to Rebbe, it's totally fine. Next page. The Ha'amris Reisha Shor B'mana V'Hevi Shnayim. So we said in the beginning of the Mishnah, if your shore costs, let's say $1,000 a mana, the heavy shnaim, and you bring 2 in instead, so 2 $500 ones. So lo yatsa. So says the Gemara that shor b'mana. The previous Mishnah said that if you say I'm going to bring a shore worth $1,000, and you bring 2, each one worth $500. You have not fulfilled your obligation. So it's interesting that the Gemara even entertains it as a question, because the answer is pretty obvious. Shor Zeh v'nistaiv shiny. This is not a question over here, because in this case you said Shor Zeh, this ox. When you say this ox, so then, and it goes against a blemish, your neder is done, because you only agreed to bring this ox. You never agreed to bring another ox. So if it gets a blemish, then your vow's out the window. But over there, you said Hare Alai, it's upon me to bring a $1,000 ox, so you cannot fulfill that with 2 $500 oxen. That's why it's different over here. If you 2 oxen, you want to bring as an Ola, and they both get a blemish, you can bring 1 in its stead. So if they're both were $500 each, you can now bring $1,000 one, and you're good to go. And Rebbe prohibits it. My time, Rebbe says you shouldn't do it because he holds that because you promised to bring 2, and you promised to bring 2, and now you're only bringing 1. The afagav din istayv lechatchila lo shari Rebbe, and even though it went and it got a blemish, ideally Rebbe still says you have to bring what you said you're going to bring, not something else. Even if it works out financially, it doesn't matter. So says the Gemara, well, one second. Why does Rebbe only argue in this case of the Mishnah? Nami Beresha. Why doesn't he argue even in the first case? So we only find Rebbe in the Mishnah arguing by the case of 2 oxen that get blemished. Could you or could you not bring one? But the first case of the Mishnah, it says 1 ox gets blemished. You could bring 2 in instead. 1 second. Yeah, why didn't Rebbe argue over there? Our Mishnah has 2 cases. The first case is 1 ox gets blemished, you could bring 2. 2 oxen get blemished, you could bring 1. Rebbe only argued after case 2. He didn't speak up after case 1. So if this is what you hold, why didn't you argue earlier? Says the Gemara, no. Rebbe Akuli Misapal. He argues on the whole Mishnah. He waited. He waited for the rabbis to finish speaking, say both of their cases. 1 ox gets blemished, you get 2. 2 oxen get blemished, you can do 1. And then Rebbe says that he argues in both those cases that you should really bring only what you said you're going to bring. Teda, I'll prove it to you. The Katani ayel ze olav in istai ratzi av b'dam of keves. Keves ela olav in istai ratzi av b'dam of ayel v'Rebbe oser. You see the same pattern in the second part of the Mishnah. We have 2 cases. A ram gets blemished, you bring a sheep. Sheep gets blemished, you bring a ram. When did Rebbe speak up? Only after the second case. So you see Rebbe both times in the Mishnah waited till the rabbis spoke out their cases, and then he went and he commented. So Shma Mina, that Rebbe really argues on both cases, and he just waited till they finished speaking. Now we're going to ask the question, Ibailahu mimina lemina mai. Can you, if you promise to bring 1 species, can you bring another species? So we gave a case in the Mishnah that you promised to bring an ox. This ox is going to be brought, and then he gets blemished. You can bring 2 oxen in instead. What if this ox gets blemished? Can you bring a ram in instead? What do you do in that case? So Tashma says the Brisa. Shor zet ola. This ox is an ola. Vinista'ev, and then it went off and got blemished. Lo yavi b'dam avayo. You should not bring with that money. Let's say that $500. You should not bring a ram. Aval maybe b'dam shtei ayalim. It's an interesting statement. You shouldn't bring 1 ram, but you could use the money to get 2 rams. V'Rebbe oser, and Rebbe prohibits this. Why? Lefi she'ein bila, because there's no mixing. Meaning, if you promise to bring 1 ox, so you bring X amount of flour. Now, if you're going to use that money and now buy 2 rams with it, so then that's going to be 2 different offerings in 2 different vessels, and you can't mix the flour together. So therefore, it's not similar to the offering that you promised to bring, according to Rebbe, and therefore Rebbe says it's not going to work. But what do we see from here? That Shma Mina, that it sounds like you could bring. You could bring if you promise to bring, if you vowed to bring 1 animal, you could bring another animal. Because we said if you want to bring an ox, you can bring 2 rams. Well, says why did you say you can bring 2 rams instead of 1 ox? Why not just say you can bring 1 ram instead of 1 ox? Why did you choose a case of 2, not 1? So so we say that according to the rabbis, they don't differentiate between a bigger sacrifice or a smaller sacrifice. They're not like Rebbe, who says that you can't fulfill your obligation with a bigger sacrifice. According to the rabbis, it's irrelevant. So why did the Brisa teach us a case where if you vowed to bring an ox, you can bring 2 rams in instead? Teach, you can bring 1 ram in instead. Says the Gemara, Trei Tanai ve'aliba derabanan. That there are 2 opinions according to the rabbis. This opinion of this Brisa held that, similar to Rebbe, if you promise to bring an ox, if you vowed to bring an ox, so ideally, two opinions, can you bring a ram in its stead? So this brisa said you have to bring two rams in its stead, but one ram is not going to work. Our Mishnah wouldn't differentiate. What would be those two opinions arguing about? Can you bring one ram instead of an ox or not? It sounds like that according to the rabbis, according to this brisa, even when the animal got blemished, they still don't want you bringing the larger animal instead of the smaller animal. 1 second. I was like, well, a ram and an ox are not. So it's two opinions. Can you bring one ram instead of an ox or two? So 1 second. A ram and an ox aren't bigger and smaller. They're just totally different animals. So, 1 second. 1 second. Yeah. One second. Meaning, sorry. In this brisa, we see, not only do the rabbis say you could bring two, that's fine, but Rebbe says that the reason why you can't bring two is because it's going to have to be two different offerings, and then you can't mix them together. But it sounds like even according to Rebbe, you could bring a different offering. I mean, even he would agree. If you offered an ox, you could bring a ram. But then we're asking, according to Rebbe, why is the case of two? Even one should be. You should even be able to bring one. No. 1 second. It sounds like that. Even if you say that from one species to another species, you could replenish it. So if you offer an ox, you could bring a ram in its stead, but the brisa only gave a case of bringing two and not one because I don't know what to say. I don't know. Yeah. Why two rams? Even bringing one ram, you're good to go. Because in a case where it became blemished, they don't differentiate, okay? So what's the answer? They don't differentiate, and therefore, bringing one animal as a replacement for two is equivalent to bringing a small one, okay? Yeah. Right. A case where it got blemished, the rabbis don't differentiate between a large one and a small one. So we say, you're right. It's two opinions according to the rabbis. Two different opinions. Our Mishnah does not differentiate between a large animal and a small animal where it became blemished, while the Tana of the brisa does. So according to this brisa, one who vowed to bring two animals and they became blemished cannot bring one animal as a replacement. You can only go one way. You can only go from 1 to 2. But if you go the other way from 2 to 1, it's not going to work. So the reason why the brisa gave this case was because to teach you that it only goes, it sounds like, from 1 to 2. But if you offered to bring 2 and then they got blemished, you couldn't bring 1, even according to the rabbis, because this brisa would disagree with our Mishnah. Our Mishnah held that if it got blemished, then it doesn't matter big to small, small to big. But in the brisa, it would make a difference. Okay, so fine. Rebbe said, though, it's prohibited to bring 2 rams instead of 1 ox, according to this brisa, because when you bring 2 ox now, you have to bring 2 different sacrifices, 2 different vessels, and therefore you can't mix the 2 vessels together. So it's not at all equivalent to what you originally vowed. Taima de ein bila. It sounds like it's only because you can't mix it together. But ha yesh bila, if you would hold that you could mix the offerings together, it would be permitted. But Rebbe, you're the one who says if you bring a ram, if you offer to bring a ram and then it got blemished, ratziyavi b'dam of keves, you could bring a sheep in its stead. Ratziyavi b'dam of keves. And keves ze'olah, if you want to bring a sheep, and then if the sheep got blemished, v'nistayev yavi b'dam of ayil, you could bring a ram in its stead. But Rebbe says in both those cases it's prohibited. The Rebbe oser. So how can Rebbe here give a reason that the reason why you can't bring 2 rams when you've had to bring 1 ox is because of a technical problem, because you can't mix the 2 sacrifices together? It sounds like if not for that reason, then you're good to go. But Rebbe in our Mishnah said that you can't even replace 1 ox with a ram or a ram with an ox, a sheep with a ram or a ram with a sheep, because you have to bring what you vowed. So says the Gemara, you're right. Trei Tanai v'aliba the Rebbe. It's 2 Tanaim according to Rebbe. They argue what Rebbe held. Ubitehorim, if it's not blemished, Egel v'hevi par, Keves v'hevi yael, Yatza. And then it says, the end of the brisa says that if you have a calf, you vow to bring a calf, and then you bring a bull or a sheep, and then you bring a ram, so you offer the younger one, and you bring the older one. Yatza, you have fulfilled your obligation. Stama kirabanan. That is according to the Rabbanan. Okay. Now, if you have 1 animal that got blemished, you can bring 2 in its stead, according to the rabbis. Amar of Menashe bar Zvid Amar Rav Lo Shanu Ela de Amar Shor Zeh Ola. This is only if you said Shor Zeh in this formulation. This ox is going to be an Ola. Aval Amar, this is where you mix it up. Shor Zeh Alai Ola. He said both those words. Shor Zeh, this shore, and then you this ox, and then you said Alai, it's upon me. That's really a contradiction. Is it this ox, or is it upon me? If you say Shor Zeh Alai Ola, then hukbah, then you have to bring an ox. You can't replenish it with 2. It's like saying Harei Alai. Says the Gemara, well, Harei Alai would mean that it's upon me to bring it. But when you say Harei Alai, following the words Harei Zeh, maybe all it means is like this. V'dilma Alai lehaviu kamar. You say, Shor Zeh, this ox, it's upon me to bring this ox. How do you view the statement? Do you say, if you say Shor Zeh, it's this ox. Shor Alai means it's upon me to bring the ox. Shor Zeh Alai, this ox upon me. How do you view that statement? Do you view that, oh, really, it's upon me? Or you say, this ox is upon me to bring this ox. And therefore, it's only about that ox. And if it gets blemished, you can bring 2 in its stead. So, says the Gemara, Ela itmar ha'chitmar. This is how you should read it. Amar of Menashe bar Zvid Amar Rav Lo Shanu Ela de Amar Shor Zeh Ola. Read it like this. You only can replace it with 2 if you say Shor Zeh Ola. That's 1. Inami, alternatively, Amar Shor Zeh Alai Ola. Or you say Shor Zeh Alai Ola. This ox is upon me to bring. But if you would say Aval Amar Shor Zeh B'dam of Alai, this ox, and then its monetary obligations upon me, Alai Ola, then you have to, no matter what, replenish the amount of this ox. You can't bring 2 in its stead. Because he's saying if this ox and its money's upon me to bring, it means you're taking financial responsibility, and no matter what happens, you're going to offer that money to the Beis HaMikdash. Okay. Says the Mishnah, Ha'omer echad mekifsei hektish. The echad mishore hektish. So you said, you have a whole farm of animals, and you have a whole farm of animals, and you say as follows: I'm going to bring one of my sheep to the base of Mikdash. I'm going to bring one of my ox to the base of Mikdash. So you have 2 sheep or 2 ox. Which one is chosen? Who's the chosen one? So Hagadol Shebehen Hektish. The most valuable one you have is the one that goes to the base of Mikdash. So if you have 2, and you just said one of my ox is going to go, one of my sheep is going to go, you take the nicer one. That's the chosen one. So Shalosha, though, let's say you have 3. Which one goes? Says the Gemara, interesting, Beinoni Shebehem Hektish. The middle one goes. We'll see why. Sounds like a contradiction. So now you say Perashti, Ve'eni Yudei Ma Perashti. I vowed something, I'm not sure what I vowed. Or you said, Osh Amrli Abba Ve'eni Yudei Ma. My father said about some kind of sacrifice. I'm not sure what he said. So Hagadol Shebehem Hektish. The oldest one, the nicer one, is going to be Hektish. Do they translate the gadol as the older one or the nicer one? Is it the older one because we presume the older one is the nicer one because it's fattier? The largest one, got it, the largest one. I say the older one, but the larger one. It's more meaty. Okay, so says the Gemara, what's the rationale by bringing the largest one, the largest sheep, the largest ox? Must be Alma Makdish Ba'ayin Yafa Makdish. Go into the back of someone's head, in the recesses of his head, into his subconscious or into his conscious. When he offered an offering, what was he offering? I'm going to offer the nicest one. I'm going to vow the nicest amount. You have a bunch of cars. I want to take one for a ride as my relaxation. You say, yeah, I take one of my cars. What did you mean? You meant the Porsche. You didn't mean the Toyota, right? So that's what you meant. So therefore, you take the nicer sheep. Okay, but that's the problem. Is the next line? Ema Seifa Beinoni Sheben Hektish. So why, when you have 3 of them, you choose the middle one? Sounds like from there. Oh no, I meant the Toyota. I would never give you the Porsche, right? Alma Makdish Ba'ayin Ra Makdish. Sounds like you don't want to give the nicer one. You want to give like the middle one. Amar Shmuel, no. You want to give the nicer one. Just compared to the worst one, the middle one is nicer. So compared to the whatever car example, yeah. So Amar Shmuel, compared to the beat up, hood missing and trunk damaged car, this is the nice one, the Toyota. Amar Shmuel Choshishin Af Lebenani Bilagabe Katan Ayin Yafahu. So compared to the worst one, this is nicer. So it's better than B is better than C. So Heichav, what should you do? We're not sure if you really should offer A or B. You want to bring the nicer one, but what did you mean by the nicer one? Did you mean B because B is nicer than C, or no? You meant A because A is the nicest. Amar B'chia Bar Rav, what do? You wait till B, the middle one, gets a blemish. Then you transfer its sanctity onto the bigger one. So therefore, you bring the bigger one, but you also don't violate anything with the middle one. So you lost out. You're supposed to bring one offering. He lost out 2, but Amr B'chia Bar Rav Nachman Mamtilo Achiyumam. Yeah, sorry. Till a blemish occurs. Yeah, speed up the process. I don't know. Amr Rav Nachman, Amr Abar Vuolo Shana Ela the Amr Echanmi Shvari Hektish. It's only when you say one of my oxen will be for sanctity, for the base of Mikdash. Aval Amar Shor B'Shvari. Say one of my ox out of my oxen will be sanctified. Then Hagala Shaban is Hektish. Then why? Because Torah b'Torai Kamar. Because when you say one of my ox from my oxen, you mean the best one. So, is that really true? You tell your friend, I'm going to rent your room in my house. Or I'm going to sell you a room in my house. I'll sell you a room in my house. It means a house and a house, but sometimes in the Gemara, house means room. So, so you show him the attic. Yeah, imagine yesterday the heat rises 120 degrees in that. So Mareyu Aliyah. Oh, Why'd you choose the attic? Lav mishum degria? Is it not because it's like the worst place to live? And therefore you see that you don't sell things or give things with the best eye. You do it with the worst eye. The cheapest one you want to give. It says no. You showed him not the aliyah, but the me'ula shebebatim. You go and show him the best room in the house. That's unusual. You have to give him the best room in the house, not the worst one. Says the Gemara Meisei, shor b'shvari hektish, v'chein shor shel hektish, and his arba chayrim hakadosh ben hektish. Ox from oxen you give, or to sanctity, or a ox shall be sanctified, and it gets mixed up with other oxen. You give the nicest one goes to hektish. The kulam and the rest of them, you're not sure which one it is, gets sold for the olas, for leftover. When the basic English is quiet, you're going to use them. You're going to use them for olos. And you can bring those olos as dessert in the temple. When it's quiet, you'll have sacrifices out of honor for the temple. Letzorche olos, v'dimei and chula, and then the money you'll sell them for olos, and the money will go to. It's going to be mundane. So, right. So, what do we learn? That you can take all these, and they're going to be sold for olos. So, targuma, ashor shel hektish. So this is talking about a case where the ox get mixed with other oxen. But so one second, it sounds like it's two different things. On the one hand, you told me if I chose an ox, I got to bring the best one. On the other hand, you told me if it gets mixed up with other ones, you could sell it and you'll sell it to buy an ola. So says the Gemara, I v'ha kamar. It says v'chein, like both of their halachas should be the same. Why in one case you bring the best ox, and the other one is you sell all of them for olos. So it says no, targuma gadol. That which it says v'chein is going on the case where you offered an ox out of your oxen. And then when you say that the ox gets mixed with other oxen, the best one goes to hektish. That's talking about there has a similarity that you give the best one to sanctity, but the fact that you offer the rest of them that you're in doubt about as olos is not a question. That the chen is only going and comparing those two details, but not the entire case. So this Mishnah that said that an ox out of my oxen, or an ox of sanctity that gets mixed up, so you give the best one to hektish. That part similar. The rest that you're in doubt about, they become olos, and that's not and that's a separate halacha. Oh man. Okay, I'll get through the next number. Okay, so. Let's see. So, not gonna happen. Okay. We'll stop here. Okay, we'll try to finish tomorrow. Maybe we'll do tomorrow at 6 o'clock to finish. So we'll do a little catch up and cooling. Right.